Alright, so I just wanted to kind of keep track of a little bit of how my development and learning progress went with this game I'm making. The basic premise is it's going to be an RPG, and I'm fleshing out the mechanics right now, but I'm not very good with Unreal Engine 4 just yet, so I decided to kind of go as simple a route as humanly possible to get more familiar with how you might write logic and how things might interact in the system. So I started off kind of creating all of these different structures, like how attributes would be set up and how classes would interact with the combatants in combat. And then I found that it might be pretty easy to just set up a mock that resembles kind of the old 80s and 70s multi-user dungeons. So what I did was I set up I call it a combat mock, and it's just a blank background. It includes a vertical widget to hold the combat log entries. And then from there, what I do is whenever I fire an event to update the log, I create a text widget which I've defined here, and all it is it's just a text block, nothing outside of that is too crazy. I just make it to where whenever I change this text variable, which is exposed, it updates the text inside of this box. And then, so I create one of those, I take the text that's being passed through this update log, and then I send it to this create text widget node, and that creates a text widget to be added to this element, the combat log element, and then it automatically scrolls it to the end at the end of the process so that it's always showing on screen. So then once that black screen shows up, the next thing is that the third person character spawns into the play, and then I start to process how it works. So I've left most of the controls in place. I've set up some additional controls I'm going to use later, but I also set up the UI on the begin play event, which adds this mock widget to the screen, which will cover the screen in black, and then start firing the mock combat event, which is a custom event I've created. And then what that will do is it will instantiate the combatants, which over here I've set up a couple macros since they're very large, but they basically look like this. And what happens is I set up a combatant using the classes I've structured using blueprints. So for instance, object-based combatant looks just like this. I just created an object-based blueprint. I set up some parameters for it to use, and then I set up that it can use abilities, what faction it's a part of, which I'll be using later. And then I move on to the ability to choose an ability of theirs. So when I define, I set up 3 abilities, and then those abilities have costs and effects, and those are defined in separate classes. So I'm constantly using construction of object, base ability, base effect, base combatant, just classes I've created as if I would in normal like C#, C++ code, but I'm doing it through blueprints, which is pretty cool. And then once all these have been constructed, so I have 3 like party members and then an enemy, I add them to an array of combatants, and I use this variable later in the tick here. So once these are instantiated, I set up just like a 1-second delay that triggers a mock combat tick event, and then that just triggers so far manage round. And I'm not sure if I'm going to break it up just yet into further things, but so far it's all in here. And then so this fires, I check to see if we're at the end of the array. If not, we just go. If so, we just reset the array index to 0 for the combatants. And then we move on to setting the active combatant. I tell the active combatant to choose an ability, and in this logic I'm just going one after the other. I'm not doing anything crazy with like initiative or anything just yet. And I set up some formatted text to show which combatant and what ability they chose to use in the process, and that updates the log, which fires the event that actually adds a line to the combat log. And then I increment the turn index, and after that I've set up a ability method which goes through each ability that the character has, checks to see if you can pay for it. So for instance, if you have combo points tier 2 or tier 1, it'll probably choose the most expensive higher tier skill first before choosing the others so that it can expend those. Now right now they're not attacking each other, but this just makes it so we know what they're going to choose next in the lineup. And then finally we can see how it plays out. So as you can see, Jue Thrust is at Cut, Mega Min Firebolt, and Bear uses Bite. And since we're not dealing with any costs just yet, or increasing combo points or anything like that, they're just choosing the free option every single time. So my next task is just to have each character pick a target and to actually fire off each skill so that they affect each other's hit points and combo points and all that good stuff. So far so good. It's been a fun experience, and I look forward to continuing this. My whole idea of using this structure, this visual format, is that eventually I can get an idea of like the comment that I want to go with, and then I can make that into a reality in a more 3D space instead of this 2D space. So that's where I'm at.